State may proceed.
Thank you, Ron. May it please the court, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good afternoon. It has never been my intent to keep you here longer than is necessary to present evidence and argument. But I do feel compelled to answer several notions posed by defense. The first thing I'm going to say is this: everything you heard this morning from defense is not evidence. The utterance of defense on this case was not evidence. The second thing I'm going to say is this. We heard a lot about the law and what the law says. And we even heard the words reasonable doubt. And I just want to share something with you as we begin. I have been practicing law for many years, but before that, in fact, I've been practicing law for decades. Soon I intend to get it right, you know. The truth of it is, it's a process. But there are some things that are inviolate. You know, first of all, I just want to say this to you. Thank you for being here. You remember on Monday, I coined the phrase watchman on the wall to you. And it was not, you're the watchman of justice or anything like that. In truth, there's one gatekeeper in this court, and that's the judge who's sitting on the bench. He is the person who determines how to rule on things. And he provides us the law that we are to apply to the facts that we learned during the course of this trial over these better part of a week that you've been present. But the first 21 years of my life, and if you can call adult life, I'll say, when I was 17, I joined the Army, spent 21 years in there. And then, by really grace, I was allowed to go to law school with the GI Bill, and I became a lawyer. I thought, perfect transition. Got to wear a uniform, right? And you got to follow rules, and you got to follow particular procedures. I was comfortable with that. So I became an attorney. And the first sort of advice I ever got from a man I respected in the law, who was like a mentor to me, said, Hal, you learned a lot of things. Then you know, and words like that. It's interesting. You hear a lot of Latin, right? And it sort of, your back, right, gets like up because I know Latin. You know, I know Latin phrases. And he said, never lose sight of common sense. Never lose sight of common sense. What is reasonable doubt? Is it quantifiable? You heard the other counselor up here saying, well, you know, preponderance of the evidence is 51%, and then you have this other level. Look, reasonable doubt is something that when you hear a case as a fair and neutral jury member, that you don't search for a doubt. You look at what you get. And if you say, you know what, no, you know, prosecutor, that doesn't jive, doesn't make sense. You know, how could, let's just take a different sort of scenario. If Jason Palmer never drove through Woodbine, Georgia, right? And we have information that he drove through Alabama to go back home. That's the scenario. And our body, her, being Jessica Goodrich, was found here. You'd sort of go, well, he wasn't there. He couldn't have did it, right? I have a reasonable doubt. Even if you had all of the prior difficulties between the two, you could still say, no, I have a reasonable doubt. He wasn't there. It's impossible, right? But you heard much about this timeline and the 24-hour discrepancy. Holy moly, the state blew that. The 24-hour discrepancy, I tell you this, that timeline has nothing to do with the elements I must prove in the charges presented. Nowhere in the charge will you see anything about a timeline. Zero. I have to prove each and every material element in the indictment charges. That's what I have to prove. And I submit to you, it's been proved beyond a reasonable doubt. I submit to you that when you walk through these doors, and you came in through another door, and then you came in through this door, no one said to you, before you enter, get rid of your common sense. Get rid of your common knowledge. Don't do that. Don't go in there. You were picked for a trial such as this because of the way you responded to questions, because of a belief and a positive attestation by you that you could be fair and neutral. And you took an oath. And that oath wasn't to listen to non-evidence spouted by any attorney, but to listen to what was said on this bench or this witness stand and what was admitted into evidence through the words of the witnesses. That included video, documents, pictures, and reports. That's what you took an oath to do. Circumstantial evidence. Let's talk about that for a minute. Circumstantial evidence is just what it says. You get ready to go to sleep at night, and you look out the window, and the ground is dry, but it's all cloudy outside. And you go to bed, the alarm clock rings 7 hours later. You wake up, and the ground, as you look out the window, is covered with water, puddles everywhere. Is it reasonable to say it rained during the night? And that's why there are puddles from that cloud? Yes. Is it reasonable to say, you know what? I think those crazy neighbors on both sides of me may have come out, got out the sprinklers, buckets of water, and just dumped it everywhere. Is that reasonable? No. That's searching for another way of explaining something, right? Like, maybe Jessica, did something crazy after she walked away from the truck, right? You heard this scenario. And, we couldn't say, because that would be too outrageous, she sprouted wings and flew to Woodbine. We couldn't say that, right? That's not even possible. But we come up with some stuff, and I use that word very lightly, and I use it out of respect to you. It's stuff you take and you throw against the wall and you hope something sticks. Like what? Like that blue car or pickup truck, right? You know what I'm talking about. That mysterious pickup truck where two people were arguing. Wow. Is that all we can find? One argument in a truck stop where people are traveling for hours and stop? That's fishing. It's fishing. When those investigators found the identity of Jessica Goodrich, they went up to Massachusetts and they did further investigations. And it didn't take long, as you heard. They developed a suspect. Oh, is it just that they didn't like Jason Palmer? Remember, he had a girlfriend. Remember Jessica Mueller? Or it wasn't Jessica Mueller, it was Katie Mueller, as I recall from the testimony of my colleague to the witness. Katie Mueller. And remember how kind Jason was to her. Do you remember? Got her a little sugar packets to keep her, her levels secure, cooked for her. That's pretty neat, right? But you also heard something else from her. When he drank, he was a different person. He got in her face. She left him. And it makes no sense that Jason Palmer would be kind to Katie Muller, and he would be a totally different person with Jessica. I submit to you that Jessica knew him a lot longer. Perhaps a decade longer plus. How long did Katie Muller actually know Jason Palmer? 2 years? Honeymoon period, I submit to you. You can reasonably infer that. But even in the honeymoon period, what did we hear? When he got drunk, he would threaten, get in your face, but you know what? All bark, no bite. I submit to you that there was a bite. And that bite came at a particular time in the relationship of Jessica Goodrich and Jason Palmer. And was there any indication that bite was going to happen? Yes. Yes. Do you remember? 2 years before this incident, you saw the text from the victim of this to her girlfriend, who is the fiancé of one of her sons. An outcry from her that said, he said he was going to stab me and watch me bleed. Isn't that amazing? 2 years before, Jessica Goodrich was stabbed. And that text said, and watch me bleed out. 2 years later, how did Jessica die? She was stabbed twice. Was her death instantaneous? No. Whoever stabbed her, I can reasonably infer, watched her bleed out and die. And her body was moved. We keep on hearing this sort of talk about, well, what about the body? Is it important to us where the body had those wounds inflicted and the death caused? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe the judge is going to give you instructions in the form of a charge regarding that. And it is, if a dead body is discovered in this state, and it cannot be readily determined in what county or state the cause of death was inflicted, venue is proper and may be proved in the county in which the dead body was discovered. Now, let me dissect that for a second and talk about venue. That's one of the highfalutin words I heard, right, in law school. Sort of sets me apart from people, right? Venue. Venue just means where the crime was committed. If a crime is committed in Nassau County or in Brunswick, which is Glynn County, it cannot be tried by a jury here in Camden County. You must be tried in the county where the crime was committed. That's venue. That's why you're here, because that body was not only found here, there is no evidence she was murdered anywhere else but here. And to say maybe doesn't cut it. That's not the law. Even if you suspect, well, you know what? Maybe when he drove off, right? Because he said she walked away and he went to sleep and he wakes up in the morning And lo and behold, Jessica's not there. He takes off. He takes off for Woodbine, Georgia, direct. And isn't it strange? He and Jessica picked out that Mexican restaurant, and the story's kind of changed. I don't know if you were watching that as he was talking about that. First it was, oh no, Jessica and I looked, and it was like this special Mexican restaurants at Exit 14. I learned something new, right? I eat at Mexican restaurants in Jacksonville, maybe Kingsland sometimes. I never knew that Exit 14 truck stop was this incredible Mexican restaurant place. Maybe it is. But ladies and gentlemen, it's reasonable for you to infer that when he arrived here, Jessica was with him. He said he went to that Mexican restaurant there at the truck stop, and he purchased a meal and went back to his truck. Was Jessica there? You, ladies and gentlemen, and you alone, will decide the credibility of witnesses. You will decide if circumstances merit proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I submit to you that common sense, your common understanding, and common knowledge must be applied in this instance. It makes no sense. You get 2 years before this murder a telegraphing of an event. You find out that there are difficulties in that traveling between Jason Palmer and Jessica Goodrich. And then you hear a nonstop trashing of Jessica Palmer. Jessica Goodrich. If Jason Palmer, when he testified from the stand, right, said all of the things he said, and he didn't do it, why on earth would you be the only one to call her a junkie? And then he added, and an alcoholic. This is someone I love. All right? I really hope this. I hope his desire to know who brought Jessica here is satisfied today by you. I hope his desire to know who killed Jessica Goodrich is satisfied by you today. Because I think you know who killed Jessica Goodrich. Circumstantial evidence is weighed, and the judge will tell you it can be weighed equally with direct evidence. Wouldn't it be great for prosecutors like me if every time we had a trial, the murder is on video? Sweet! Or someone else witnesses it and goes, I saw it. Cowards are not prone to kill people in the light of day, in the presence of others. And just maybe, a perfect place to get rid of my problems and take care of my future is this Podunk County in southern Georgia, where you probably got hillbillies as law enforcement officers. And you don't have a population like you do in Worcester, Massachusetts, or even Wildwood, Florida, or even St. Mary's, Georgia, or how about Kingsland? Too populated. But how about this remote stop between Jacksonville and Brunswick? A hillbilly town. Surely law enforcement is not intelligent enough to find out who dumped this body And I want to add a couple of other things. It's like they did not travel to Wildwood to find this primary murder location. Where? Give me a clue. Maybe it was en route. Or you know what? Maybe it's as the state says, it was during that 12 plus hours stop here in Woodbine, Georgia. 12 plus hours. A man whose testimony, I submit to you, is not credible. Not credible at all. When you found out, so when did you find out about the death of the person you love? The person who was in your truck, as you said, from early September through early October. When you found out she was dead, when was that? I don't know. That was almost 2 years ago. Wasn't quite 2 years ago, but it was almost 2 years ago. Holy moly! You remembered the name of the Mexican restaurant, for heaven's sake. Circumstances. I mentioned to you I would only mention my name once. And the reason for that is, I believe we are here to seek justice. For Jessica Goodrich. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I caution you. If you buy into the tact, and people tack in this direction, if you buy into the tact that, let's say for argument's sake, she was a junkie. She was an alcoholic, as Jason Palmer so indicated, right? And then let's add something to it. She was dragged, as we learned from the pathologist, he believed she was dragged, right? Post-mortem scrapes on her legs and on her body. She was dragged to that location. And you know what? She was dirty, too. She had dirty fingernails. Wow. So she was a dirty, junkie alcoholic. And if you buy into all of that, and if you say, okay, she was all of those things, is death that bad? Is killing her that bad? Come on, right? She brought this on herself, didn't she? She brought it on herself, right? She was bedridden from the pain. We heard that from Ms. Victoria Crosby. She didn't want to expose the grandchildren to that type of, suffering. Basically, you can infer that. I understand that. But I get a picture that we have a woman who is on prescription drugs. You heard that. We had a woman, who I believe you can reasonably infer had no one to turn to. The only person she had to turn to, it appears, was guess who? The same person that she had a tattoo of on her body. Remember that? Jason and Jessica. Wow. Remember, I mentioned early on, motive, means, and opportunity. That's part of the circumstantial evidence. What's the motivation? Well, Jason Palmer had another love interest. In fact, he may have had another, right? The other sister of Jessica Goodrich. He had a child on the way. The woman was 8 or 9 months pregnant. That was Katie Muller. Didn't tell her initially that he took Jessica on that trip. Interesting, right? And then, did you detect some type of conflict on the stand here? Well, you know, he broke up and stuff like that. Really, sir? And what about the messages, the family members like JoJo saying, Jessica is basically going to ruin my future? And the family's response, I wouldn't even call it tepid. It was sort of like, well, we don't care. If you send her back, she's not staying at our home. No kidding, right? Remember when I asked him yesterday when he was on the stand here, ladies and gentlemen, I asked him, you were having all these outcries to family members, help me, help me, help me, right? Jessica walks away, he says, on the 5th in Wildwood. Right? Does he contact the family and go, hey, stop thinking about how you might help me. Jessica made up her own mind. She's an adult. I know I said yesterday she needs a babysitter and, she needs medical help. But she walked away. Problem solved. Do you remember him? I said, sir, was your problem resolved? Yeah, she walked away. Did he tell anybody? No. I submit to you that his dog, Dexter, had a better chance at survival than Jessica Goodrich. And the proof was found on October 8th here in Woodbine. No matter how much we heard the badgering in questions to that pathologist, well, can we talk about rigor mortis, right? And the timelines? I notice things in court. I notice when people are taking notes. Thank you for doing that. Shortly, you will have an opportunity to combine your note-taking and talk about this case and what the law calls deliberate. You decide the credibility of every witness on this stand. You decide if the standard set by law was achieved, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. What on earth other reason besides Jason Palmer being the perpetrator of this murder, this aggravated assault, and this concealment of the body? What other reasonable explanation is there when both indisputable travel through truck stop at exit 14 on I-95 in early October? What other possible explanation is there? Remember, Jessica had money in credit cards, maybe money she took from me, from my wallet. She took money from my wallet sometimes. I'll share that with you from the stand. Wow. Wow. Jessica brought this on herself. Why would you say that? Why would you call her a junkie and an alcoholic? Why? I'd like to know how she got here. This is your opportunity to tell him. It's your opportunity also to let him know who the murderer is. You can do that. It's in your power. I'm referring to my notes, ladies and gentlemen, because I don't want to leave anything out that's important for you to know. That's a part of my job, to make sure justice is done for Jessica Goodrich. Do you remember that text message from Jessica to JoJo? In it, she said, "I fear for my life with this guy." Wow. Is that a sort of an outcry? Not the outcry, "Help me, she's a drunk. Help me, she's loud. Help me, she's scaring Dexter." Motive, means, he had that special knife. And all of a sudden, it didn't become very special. I lost it, I don't know where. Wow, but you mentioned that to Katie Muller. It was a special knife. Now it had no meaning, really? Yeah, it was lost way before this incident. Oh, okay. Is that credible? Well, Katie didn't see it. I'm sure she was riveted on finding that knife every time she got in and out of the car or the truck. No, that's not plausible. No, she was stabbed at close quarters. And you can reasonably infer she knew it was coming. How can I do that? Because she has a defensive wound on her hand. Somebody was coming at her with a knife, and she had her hands up. Can you imagine that? You're more than 1,000 miles from your home in Massachusetts, and you got somebody you love with their name on your heart tattoo on your body, and they are coming at you. Holy moly, what a betrayal. What a betrayal. That was the means. What was the opportunity? Well, I'm a truck driver. I have a love interest. She's pregnant. I also have the opportunity in the future, you can reasonably infer, maybe to get to know Jessica's sister. I had a love interest in her. But how would the opportunity to present itself? She needed my help. So I put her in my truck, right? And you remember one of those communications? She's mad at me. We're not sleeping next to each other. Holy. No, I was just trying to help her. And then you saw another communication about, "I need sex." Remember that? That was a conversation with Katie Muller. After the death of Jessica Goodrich. All we have is mere presence. Really? I thought he wasn't there. No, he was there. He was at exit 14. I'm sort of wondering, was Jessica's last meal from that Mexican restaurant? I don't know. But we know, based on Jason Palmer's testimony, he went to that Mexican restaurant, he bought some food, brought it back to the truck. I wonder where Jessica was at that time. Well, there's really no proof he did it. Things were tested and they came back negative. Wow. They are co-located in that same small area I asked Jason Palmer about for the better part of a month. We know she scratched his face. She said it, and he said it. Right? So, how do you scratch one's face? You can reasonably infer it's by, fingernails. James Madison, one of our founding fathers, said this: "If men were angels, there would be no need for government." Ladies and gentlemen, men are not angels, and that's why government exists. It's why we have a standing army. It's why we have law enforcement officials like this. It's why we have firefighters. It's why we have judges sitting on the bench. It's why we have courts like this. And guess what? It's why we have you assembled this week. Men are not angels, and they do evil things, and people need to recognize that, not out of a blind mob mentality, but out of the presentation of evidence that compels you to say, no other person could form as he did as the ideal suspect in this murder. How on earth did Jessica Goodrich make it to Woodbine, Georgia, after walking away, so says Jason Palmer, from his truck? And what a magnanimous, great person he is, right? When you think of Katie Muller, boy, he cared for her and everything, made her soup. I wonder if he made soup or any kind of food for Jessica Goodrich after having a good night's sleep and Jessica walked away, because he thought she would return, right? Why not do something magnanimous? Did you hear anything about that? I didn't. But I did hear he left, and he told nobody, knowing she was drunk the day before, as he says, loud, boisterous. The day before, he even said needed medical attention and detox. Wow. I'm going to give you another quote, ladies and gentlemen, and it's this. It's from an 18th century philosopher, and it's sort of something I've believed in my whole adult life. All that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good men, and I'll add women, to do nothing. I seek justice for Jessica Palmer. Correction, I keep on saying that. They're so intertwined when I think of that heart, you know? And they were engaged at one time, we heard from Jason Palmer, and I keep on slipping and saying Jessica Palmer. They were that close at one time. They were about to be married. They were engaged. We can't escape the confirmed evidence. Jason Michael Palmer stayed at the Woodbine truck stop for more than 12 hours. More than 12 hours. Jessica Goodrich never left that truck stop on her own accord. And you saw the pictures, and I'm not going to re-show them. I don't need to. The body of Jessica Goodrich was found on October 8th. You saw that with the guy. You saw that through the testimony of the individual who said he was walking his dog and found her. She loved him to the point of bearing a tattoo with his name and a heart. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that Jason Palmer is guilty of malice murder. Now, that doesn't mean, and you'll hear from the judge, that he's an evil person who had this evil intent, although I think you could infer that. But did you see a plan that took shape? Do you, like I, see the motive, means, and opportunity? He isolated her from her family, repeatedly contacted the family, even shared her yelling at him. I don't know how she got into that state of perhaps intoxication. I don't know. But you can infer things. Right? She was an alcoholic. Mr. Palmer, are you an alcoholic? No. She was a raving alcoholic, a junkie, right? She is worthy of life. She's worthy of protection under the law. I started saying this earlier. There is a slippery slope, ladies and gentlemen, when you start perceiving others as not being worthy. Did anybody reject her? Yes. Well, nobody needed her. I don't care who needed her. She was a human being whose life was took before her time. And ladies and gentlemen, I am, and my office is no respecter of persons. If someone commits a crime here, and I can prove it in court, and I don't care if it's a homeless junkie or a judge, I will prosecute them. I will do that. Not on my watch does someone get dumped here with evidence of who did it, and we just turn a blind eye and walk away because, you know what, that would disturb the peace of this very nice community. No, I don't care about her status in life. She was a human being, and that's all the law requires. Someone take the life of a human being, and he did that. Jason Palmer, sitting over there, did that. You can look at him now. He's under the bright light of justice today. Look at him. And I know you were looking at him during the trial, and you had a right to do that. And I hope you saw him for what he is. The state submits to you that the evidence, the totality of the evidence, proves beyond a reasonable doubt that Jason Palmer is guilty of felony murder. Now, that felony murder was inflicted by him stabbing Jessica Goodrich. And the only thing that makes that worse in my mind is she saw it coming and she bled out. True to that email that she had sent 2 years prior. Man, she was crying out to her son. She said, "I fear for my life." Can you imagine that predicament? And having no one put out a hand to help you. Instead, the big victim here is Jason Palmer. Now, I needed help, and no one helped me. Put her on a damn bus. You take her from Worcester, Massachusetts to Central Florida, and you think she's going to walk away from the only thing she knows and loves in that area? I don't think so. He's guilty of aggravated assault. The overwhelming circumstantial evidence in this case is proof of that, proof beyond reasonable doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, you want videos of him stabbing her? I don't got them. You want pictures of him stabbing her? I don't have that. You want an eyewitness to that event? I don't have that. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. And that's why now, today, at this time, more than ever, I ask you, do not abandon common sense. When I first entered the law, I was told repeatedly by people, the law is fact without emotion and consecrated principles. I didn't believe that for a second. And I wouldn't be in this business if I believed that. I believe what I'm doing. And I believe it's important to this community. And I believe your role is important as well. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to wake up and look at myself in the mirror, and I'm going to go on with another case. And I'm going to feel good about myself. Yes, I'm human. Things get screwed up. Timelines run wrong. but it doesn't alter the essential elements of the charges. If we can't have justice in this county, I may as well, at the end of the day, lower that flag out front, roll it up, and toss it in the woods near the truck stop. Because that's where it belongs here if we can't have justice in this county. But I think even if I did that, you would have people. You'd have people like this officer. You remember her. She was a witness. You'd have people like that officer. She'd go pick up the flag. She'd put it back up. And that's how this legacy of justice in our community continues, because people care. I ask you to care, and I believe you do. I ask you to render justice. Don't let injustice happen on your watch. Thank you. Thank you.